In today's journey, we make an early apocalypse mango cherry wine. This is great for when the world has just begun to end and the grocery stores are still open and accepting money. Although supplies may be limited, you might have to make some adjustments on the fly. But any good scavenger will tell you that you are able to make alcohol from basically any kind of sugar. The real trick is to read the ingredient list first. We want it to be full of normal human words and not fancy pants scientific stuff that no one can understand. As you can see, our juice here is mostly just water with sugar and some flavor added, citric acid being the scariest thing on there. But that, nor anything else on this list, will inhibit our yeast. So it's good, but maybe not perfect, unlike this cherry juice, which is 100% tart cherry juice. No added water or sugars. One doesn't necessarily work better than the other, and I actually prefer to mix them together. But it's all about making the best of what you got. And sure, somewhere there's a way to actually ferment a Mountain Dew. It's best to avoid anything with these kinds of ingredients listed on there, as a number of these aren't just mysterious chemicals, but actual stabilizers to prevent things like yeast from growing in the product. Plus, the amount of yeast that would be needed to overcome the preservatives would not be beneficial in a survival situation. Especially when we start talking about late apocalypse brewing, when we have to get all of our yeast from apples. But that's a whole nother kettle of fish. As this early in the apocalypse, you should have a stash of yeast laying around still. We keep a large number around in case we ever have to repitch something. You know, for like emergencies and stuff. Now, this is a lot like making hooch, but that doesn't mean we're going to skip on the sanitizing. The real trick here, though, is that we'll want to use as little as possible and save any that's left over. Apparently, Phil missed the memo about the little as possible. And if you're wondering why he poured some in the lid first, well, that's because he wanted to make sure the sanitizer got everywhere and to make sure it hit all the walls. And he may have used more sanitizer than he needed, but at least he's putting it into a bucket to be used for other tasks around the studio. And as a wise woman once told me, don't fear the foam. So with all the sanitation done, all we have left to do is to mix all the ingredients we're going to use today. And that's going to be based off whatever you decide you want to put into your batch. It's really just about making the best of whatever situation you find yourself in. Today, our batch will include 1 gallon of mango nectar. And if you're wondering what the hell we're pouring it into, it's a 1.3 gallon wide mouth DemiJohn. These are great for doing small experimental batches and are extremely easy to clean. But in an emergency, you can use almost any glass or stainless steel vessel that has a lid, but not necessarily airtight. And sure, ideally, yes, you'd use an airlock, but this is the end of the world we're talking about. Ain't no one got time for that. Poke a hole in a balloon if you're that worried about it. Now, one of the things we've done to save on some sanitizer use is to forego any measuring devices. So we're going to pour in about 1/3 of this half gallon of cherry juice. And it's kind of weird how it's not really mixing together that well. It just goes to show that you should stir everything you mix together. And doing recipes like this can teach you to practice your intuition. Sometimes brewing and vinting isn't all about the math and numbers, and about doing what you feel is right. Just like how Phil thinks it's right to add frozen sweet cherries into the mix now. Although we won't want to just dump them directly into the vessel. First, instead of just cutting them up when we open the bag, we're going to mush them right inside of there. It's already sanitary in there. We let these ones thaw out a bit to make the job a bit easier. Not only does it make it easier to squish them in the bag, but it also makes sure that the hooch mix here doesn't get too cold right before we pitch the yeast. So excuse us for a moment as we warm these up a bit. They don't need to be room temperature, but they shouldn't be freezing to your hand. But this is about 10 ounces, and we're going to just add this directly in once we manage to get it open. And yes, using frozen fruit in this case is a benefit, as freezing it has killed off any of the wild yeast or bacteria that could be living inside of it. A side benefit is also that it makes the juices flow out a lot easier because of the ice crystals. But even still, always check the ingredients list to make sure that it's only cherries in there and not something else that was added as a stabilizer or other additives. Even honey and maple syrup should be checked, as there are counterfeits sitting right next to them on the grocery store shelves. Remember, there is no reason to ever trust anything, except besides the fact that the tie-dyed nature of this mixture means that I should probably mix it up a bit more and get ready to take a hydrometer reading off camera. Although it's the apocalypse, so, just have fun with it. And if you feel that you're lacking in the sugar department, check out the preserve section of the grocery store. There's a great place to get additional fruit sugars, as it's just sugar, fruit, and sometimes pectin in jelly and jams. Or even better yet, a nice marmalade. Bonus points to you if you comment below about what makes marmalade different than jams. And a point deduction to anyone who's commented below about how disgusting of a color this is. As remember, a lot can change during fermentation and clarification. And of course, at this point, we would recommend to use any yeast that you can get your hands on that's not bread yeast. But we'll be using the 7-1B because of its versatility and its resilience to hardship. Additionally, it will also enhance the fruit flavors and add fruity esters. And yes, we are seriously going to ferment this without an airlock. Little known fact, not all primaries need to use an airlock all the time. It's just recommended, especially for amateur brewers. And in times like these, we need rebel zebras, not sheep. And on that note, stay safe out there, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, or check out some of our other videos.